cannot tell you how excited I am. So look what's about to happen. You are about to be with the wonderful, incredible Sirena Andrea. And some of you guys have been journeying with this Sacred Storytelling Summit for, we're like at the climax, right? We're like almost halfway through, or if we're looking at the story journey, we're like peak experience, and we get to start this day with receiving some beautiful stories by an amazing storyteller. I met Serena, oh my God, how many years ago? I think we're entering into like past multiple decades. We're in a multi-decade relationship. I think that's called a committed relationship. And and we are brought together by a dear, dear sister who she brings together some of the most amazing humans and also storytellers. And so we have a soul connection in the kind of the more deeper of ways. But we also have the soul sister connection through storytelling. And Serena has been an absolute leader and pioneer in the world of storytelling in so many different ways. And I can't wait to tell you a couple of them. But really what I want to tell you before I even get into that is this woman's heart. She has this big, magnificent heart and this extraordinary presence in her body and this commitment to life itself. And these things come through the way that she talks story and the way that she works with her students and the other people that she's in the storied space with. And so it's really my honor to get to be with her today and to share her with you. It feels like a gift that we're unwrapping together. So Serena's storytelling revolves around exploring and performing myths, fairy tales, and legends from diverse cultures, emphasizing inclusivity, authenticity, empathy, and wonder. She sharpened her skills in Waldorf, Montessori, Buddhist, outdoor classrooms. Can I also share that we share a godchild together? She's the fairy godmother, and I'm the witch mother.
Enchanted witch.
Right. Her original storytelling program, the Universe Monologues, is a safe and transformative environment where women share their true life stories, allowing them to move through suppressed shame or trauma. Her work supports women, taps into their vitality and hidden potential that may have been buried under grief, fear, sadness, or pain. All of Serena's storytelling courses are rooted in sacred embodiment and playful co-creative container, which involves deep imagination, elocutation. I've never even seen that word. We're gonna have to do some etymology later. And history and an emotionally intelligent storytelling framework. She's also the founder of the Santa Cruz Storytelling Festival. And Serena is dedicated to empowering storytellers of all ages to embrace their voice, creativity, personal wisdom, and compassion so that they contribute their gifts to their community. So by now you're onto it. We are in for such a delicious treat. And I will now hand the mic over to this beautiful human.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey, for all the work you're doing behind the scenes. And welcome, welcome, story lovers, storytellers, embodied ones. So wonderful to see your faces. As Leah was sharing, there's something magical that happens when we come together. And we're doing our best to reach across landscapes to be with each other today. So if you can at all, turn on your cameras and be as you are. I see some of you kicking back. I see some of you eating your breakfast or maybe lunch. Like, no problem. Come as you are. But your smiles, your gleaming eyes, your inquisitive faces, it creates what we storytellers call enchantment, right? This connection between all of us. And enchantment is what we're here to talk about. What is enchantment? How does it work? And how can we bring that into our storytelling? Before I go too much farther, I just want to acknowledge the old story which I am living on. I want to acknowledge that I'm living on the land that's been tended for thousands of years by the people of the Aswas and Amamutsa tribal band. And I honor these people, their grief, their traditions, and the creatures that are indigenous to this area. My people are travelers. Like stories travel with people. Stories travel with plants. Stories travel on the hooves of creatures. My family comes from Eastern Europe. And when I became a storyteller, one of the things that I was crazy about knowing was, where do the stories come from? Where are the roots of the stories? And so one of my favorite things to do is to research stories, to find out where they come from, and to read as many variations as possible. Because a story, especially an oral story, right, that's been passed on orally from mouth to mouth, changes. And so when I find a story, I want to find as many versions as possible. And then I weave it together like a tapestry, getting as many details as possible, because so many of the details have been lost. I'm curious if I could get a couple voices in the space before I begin, so I'm not the only one here. I'm just curious if a couple of you would raise your electronic hand or your human hand and just let me know why you're here. What brought you to a class on enchantment? Or even deeper, do you have a relationship with this particular story, this white witch, this Ceridwen story? Is there anyone here that would share a couple of sentences? You don't have to share your whole life story, just a couple of sentences. Yeah, Hester from the UK. I would love to hear from you. And then Judy.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. I was interested in your Waldorf background. I first was impressed with storytelling by a very ancient Waldorf nursery school teller, dealing with a bunch of rowdy boys. But in particular, I also work with story and mythology and women. And this coming weekend, I have one called Waking the Wisdom of the Wild Woman. And we shall be looking at the stories of Baba Yaga.
Yes, one of my favorites.
She's beautiful, isn't she?
Yes. Oh.
And so I just got the email about your thing yesterday, and it just seemed as though it had been sent by the goddess to just back me up. So I'm so very grateful to see it, and I wish you every blessing. Thank you very much.
Hester. So wonderful to hear from you. Oh, I'm going to drop some nuggets from the Waldorf tradition today, and I hope those bless you on your way of sharing story. Thank you. Jody, yeah, let's hear from you, love.
Hi. I just I was just captivated by the title of it. I've always loved fairy tales, sort of adult enchantment stories, because I feel that I've had some direct experiences in life where life has actually felt as if there's an enchantment to it. I've had glimpses of that, and so I've always been drawn to this. So and I have a friend who lives in Wales. She's just moved to Wales. I invited her to this, but I don't think she made it. But anyway, yeah.
Wonderful to have you here, Jody.
The idea of enchantment, because life is full of ups and downs, but it can be enchanting.
Thank you. Thank you. You're right. Thank you for getting your voice in the group. Sometimes enchantments can be dangerous. People in the story get enchanted and ensorcelled and entrapped in a way that they never thought possible. Stories are maps. They were meant to hold wisdom about how to navigate a complex human experience. And they were passed down generation to generation, hoping that the young ones and the old ones in the village would remember these stories as a way to help navigate life, not through the head, but through the heart, right? Because as human beings, one of the things that differentiates us from the other sentient beings is we have this human heart that has the capacity to feel so many things, right? We can love something so much, like we would give our life to it, and we would kill anything that threatened it, right? We can love and we can kill. Our hearts can break open in tremendous grief, where we feel completely powerless. And then we can rise up in anger and create boundaries. The human heart is meant to be movable. And stories, especially the old ones, the old stories have these woven into a story so that we can see ourselves, even walk alongside the heroes and sheroes of the stories and navigate our human experience. So one of the ways I love, love, love to use stories is to help me navigate my own life and to help my students. Because like Jody was saying, life is up and down. Sometimes our life feels really blessed, we're skating, everything's falling into place. And the next moment, things are dissolving and crumbling. How many of you have had both experiences? Ups and downs. Yeah, yeah. This is the nature of life. When I became enchanted with this story, I heard it the first time and my imagination exploded. So I've been tracking it like a wild animal for many moons now. And I just want to say that this story isn't from my tradition. It wasn't told to me by an elder. So there may be pieces that are missing. So if you are from this part of the world, or your people are from this part of the world and I miss anything, please educate me in the chat and I will weave that in the next time. Hi, Ike, nice to see you from Michigan. Hi, Valerie, nice to see you too. I see Donna. Oh yeah, hi, Karen. Amy, thank you, loves, for sharing your faces. Hi, Ruthie. So how many of you here are actual storytellers yourself? You tell stories to your grandkids, to your students. How many of you are there? Awesome. And how many of you want to? How many of you want to have more skills to tell? Yeah, yeah. You're budding, you're growing, Phoebe, Dawn, yeah. And you're wanting to expand your skill set. Amy too, great. What's going to happen today is I'm going to teach you a little bit about story. I'm going to tell you a story so you can see it in action. And then I'm going to give you a moment to reflect on the story so that you can find yourself in it. So it's going to be threefold, because 3 is a charm. That's what they always say, right? Amy, do you have a question? Okay, cool. I was just checking because you got your hand up. No worries. So I'm gonna share with you something from the Waldorf tradition, and it's the 4 pillars of storytelling. And I learned this in elementary school classrooms because when I first started telling, I was telling to small people, and their attention span is super short. And I had to do all kinds of things to keep their attention. When I graduated from the classroom and started telling to big people, I found out that big people have short attention spans as well. So some of these tricks work for everyone, right? So if you have a piece of paper, get ready to take some notes. This is also being recorded so you can listen to it later. But this comes from the Waldorf tradition. And I had the great honor to work with a 3-time Waldorf teacher, taking his classrooms K to 8, 3 different times, which is quite a hat trick if you've ever been in education. So how to enchant your audience, how to bring them in, how to create a net of delight and intrigue so that they can't not listen. The first thing is details. Without details, you don't have a story. A story is a story because you're describing something that actually happened. It's not a concept. You're not describing something up here. You're actually talking about it. So when you open your story, some of the most important details to share is where, who, and when. Some people won't even listen unless you put those details in. Have you ever started to tell a story and then someone interrupts you? They're like, so where was that? Right? Right, Kate, you're like, and then you have to stop your story. You're like, well, that was in Detroit. And then you keep going. You're like, well, was that this year Or is that a long time ago? You're like, so I was in Detroit last week, right? Those details help people anchor their imagination in an actual time and location. Notice I did that when I got on the call, when I talked about the land that I live on and who it used and who are the stewards of this land. I located myself in time and space. This is helpful. Some people won't remember it. Some people it won't matter to, but a portion of your audience, they need to know, right? This last Christmas, when I was at my mom's house, it was cold and it was raining, and I forgot my favorite boots, my black ones with the heavy soles. Can you see my shoes? Can you feel the weather? Yeah. Those kinds of details help us orient and begin to open up our imagination. Because enchantment happens in our minds. It's a place we imagine and go to. And it doesn't matter if each and every listener to my story is imagining a different quality of rain or a different pair of boots. What matters is we're all starting to imagine together. Now, some of you as storytellers are really good at details, so it'll be no big deal. You could probably tell me the year it happened, the month it happened. But for some of you, details are not your home base. So just add a few, right? It's like opening your toolkit and having more things to share. If we just stayed in the detail of story, we would bore people to death. I'm sure you've all met those storytellers. Before they were even going to tell you what happened, they're like ingrained in all of the minutia. So from details, we want to move into some kind of emotional content, some feeling sense or tone. That Christmas, I was up at my mom's house and it was raining. I had a terrible chest cold. It felt so heavy that I couldn't think about the sparkles on the Christmas tree. All I was feeling was the deep grief of my relationship ending. Or that Christmas, I hadn't seen my nephew in 6 months. As soon as I saw his smile and the sparkle of the lights in his eyes, it was like a heavy weight lifted off of my shoulders. We played chess for 3 hours. It didn't matter that it was raining outside. We were stuck inside together, having a blast. To bring in that feeling tone at the beginning helps your listener access the main character's emotional state, whether it's yours because you're telling a personal story or it's the characters in your story. Again, some of you may not feel comfortable sharing a lot of emotions in your story. It's a place to practice to bring people in. I always like to think too that emotion is like motion. So when we add emotions to a story, it moves people. It has them feel and connect with the story, as opposed just to thinking about it. So the third pillar, the first one's detail, the second one's emotion. The third one is what one of my favorite mentors calls mounting action. Right? So action, stories are adventures. They're designed to take people someplace. So when we're telling a story and we involve action, something happened. And then something happened after that. And then something happened after that. We're now in a different place. And why I call it mounting action is because usually with life, right, one thing happened, and then the next thing happened, and then the next thing happened, and then like, oh my God, something was at stake, right? Something was at stake. For example, I'd forgotten my favorite boots when I went to my mom's for Christmas. So I had to borrow hers. They were 2 sizes too big for me. I had to wear 3 pairs of socks when I went out to stomp in the mud puddles with my nephew. At first it was okay, but we start playing basketball. Have you ever played basketball on boots that are 3 sizes too big? The shoes started to rub up against the back of my heels. By the end of the 3rd day, I had blisters this big and I couldn't wear any shoes at all. So then what happened? You found me walking barefoot in the rain. The feel of mud between my toes. So mounting action, things that happen, cause and effect is another way to look at it. Takes people forward in the story. And one of the things I notice with beginning storytellers is they get into too many details with the action. You actually don't have to have that much detail. Action is quick. Think about riding a horse, riding a bike. Think about going to town. Think about going to another village. Things happen one after the other, one after the other. And it creates a kind of rhythm in your story. It creates a kind of pulse. They say that storytelling is more like music than it is like writing or speaking. There's a rhythm to story. And mounting action is one of the places where we can invoke rhythm. Now, for many of you, action might be easy. It might be easy for you to say what happened. I made my coffee, and then I read the newspaper, and then I walked my dog, right? Action might be super easy for you, but emotional tone might be more of a challenge. So again, these are different ingredients to add to your story. I love action. You'll watch what happens when I tell. I really get into it because I like to move my body. I like to feel things in my body. So I really get into mounting action. The 4th pillar is the most obscure and one of my favorites. Because if I hadn't learned about this from a Waldorf teacher, it never would have occurred to me, even though I love to eat. I love to eat. I come from a long line of cooks, restaurant owners. We love to eat in my family. It's the center of our family traditions. And in storytelling, taste can wake up your listeners. So it's something different to say, when I went home for Christmas, we had our traditional family dinner. Another thing to say, when I walked in the house, I could hear my mom in the kitchen. She was stirring the big pot of cioppino. I could smell the tomato sauce mixed with the garlic. It was like a spice in the air that hit my nose. And then right there in the middle of the table, the sweet smell of homemade bread, the kind she makes every year, the one she braids and coats with a light snow of powdered sugar. Whose mouth might be watering, right? In every fairy tale, usually there's a banquet or a feast at the end, right? Because as human animals, the feast, the coming together and having enough food really satisfies us. It makes us feel at home and comforted. So talking about food or taste may be obscure. How do you get food in your story? Watch me do it. I've met multiple storytellers. All they do is talk about food. That's their jam. But consider the taste of the air, right? I walked outside my house. There was ash at the tip of my tongue. I could smell the fire coming closer to the house. When I walked into the midwife's hut, I could smell the dried flowers hanging off of her ceiling. She gave me a tincture, put it under my tongue that tasted like dirt, mushrooms, and dandelion. Notice what's happening to your mouth, right? This awakens our senses. And the more of our senses that get awakened in a story, the more we are walking along with the characters. Details, emotions, action, and taste. If you use these 4 different components in any way you want to in your story, you will enliven and awaken the senses of your listeners. I love it. I can see you all thinking. It's like little wheels going. They're like, oh, it's not that complicated, right? So play with it in your next storytelling. I promised I would give you an example of all of these things in action. I'm going to do that next. I'm going to drop into this story with you. And as I tell, you're invited to notice how I use these 4 pillars. And one of my other favorite mentors talks about using story as a map to see where we are in our own personal story. How do you do that? How do you use a myth or a fairy tale or a legend to mirror, like, this is happening with me, even though this story happened in the before times? One of the ways to enter a story is to look for a place in the story that captures your attention. It's something you either love about the story, you're like, yeah, that, tell me more about that. Or it could be a place in the story where you're just like, that's wrong. It should not have happened that way, right? You're irritated or upset about it. These are doorways. These are ways to enter a story and make it more personal. Because each and every one of you is living your own myth. You're living large in your own life. And you probably have some disturbance in your life. There's some conundrum. There's some relationship you're working through or working out, just like the characters in the story. And the magic of story is that we can use those myths, fairy tales, and legends to actually reflect back to us like, oh, wow, I could see my own true life story like this. I could make choices like that. I have superpowers, just like the ones in the story. I'm just going to pause for a minute to see if anybody has any questions. Deep insights that have popped up that you want to share. Okay. Great. So we're going to dive in. Thank you. Thank you for the love in the chat. I appreciate that. As I reference Waldorf, I also want to make it really clear that we're all designed to tell and understand stories. As a human species, we've been telling stories for over 15,000 years, but we've only been reading for 5. We didn't have to go to school to tell, to listen. We're actually wired in our DNA, because this is how information was passed down, how to survive. We were told these things by our parents, our grandparents, aunts and uncles. Many of us have been severed from that tradition, but in our DNA, which is all through our body, we know story. So as you listen into this story, I invite you to take deep breath. Let your imagination open as wide as it wants to, because this is a very, very old story. You see, this story comes from the before times, in a time where kings and queens and enchanted lakes were around every corner. And magical talismans popped out, hidden in the forest. And normal people like you and me could be wandering through the landscape, and suddenly our lives would be changed. They say there was a lake, pristine and reflecting the clouds in the sky, surrounded by trees with pine needles that smelled like Christmas. And from that lake, magical beings stepped right out. They say that's where Cerdiwin came from. One day, this beautiful goddess stepped right out and into her life. They say that she came with a cauldron. And that is where the story begins. She lived at the side of the lake with her family, and people would walk for miles and miles to see her. She had a way with the plant world. In her cauldron, she could brew potions to heal your children from sicknesses that no doctor could touch. In this big, heavy cast iron pot, she could make potions to help your lovers fall more in love with you. She was able to take long walks to the edge of the forest and beyond the veil, concocting secret potions and formulas that people would walk miles and miles for. She had a reputation for helping and caring. And even with that beautiful reputation, there were some that still feared her, for she had a power that was intangible. She gave birth to twins. Her daughter, cherry-cheeked, bright-eyed, ready to take on the world the moment her feet stepped onto the earth. However, her son was different. He was smaller. His body was more twisted. And as he grew, the light inside just didn't turn on the way his sisters did. She feared for him. She created concoction after concoction and fed him the best of everything, but he just was different. His speech was slow, his thoughts were muddy, and he wasn't the shining radiance of anyone else in the family. If you are a mother, you know the fierce love of a mother for a child. And even though her son was not beautiful, smart, or clever, she loved him just the same. And while she was out wandering the forest, she would often ruminate and ask for guidance on what she could do to help him. And then one day it came, like it does to all of us when we're not trying, and we open up our minds to a greater something. A potion came. If I can't make him handsome, strong, or clever, I will make him a poet and a storyteller. I will create a concoction that will make his tongue like silver, so that he can enchant anyone with the worlds he creates, the inspiration he draws from other worlds. And people will seek his company for his wisdom and his imagination. This became her only focus. And after many moons of gathering just the right leaves and roots and blossoms, she discovered that to make this potion potent, it would take a year and a day of constant tending, boiling, and stirring in this great cauldron. And because she had so much to attend to, she knew she needed someone to do the stirring. So she found a young man in the village who was everything her son wasn't. He was vivacious, He was willing, and he was trustworthy. He could focus on things. And she employed him for this great task. After the cauldron was filled, he was set there with a big wooden paddle to stir day and night. Every night at midnight, she would quietly come out to check on the brew and bring him a plate of food. Home-baked bread, dark, sweet fruits, and a small glass of clear water. That doesn't seem like enough food to sustain a young man who doesn't sleep day or night and is constantly stirring. But there was something special she put in that nourishment. And every time he stopped to eat just for a moment, he felt invigorated, as if he were slipping into a dream where he was never, ever tired. Now, this went on, moon after moon, day after day, in all kinds of weather, until the young man became enchanted by the potion himself. Some nights, the potion would broil. It would turn copper and saffron. Other nights, he could swear there were small boats sailing across the top of the liquid, shooting at other tiny ships in a battle right there in the cauldron. He began to hallucinate and dream of what it would be like to finally put down the paddle and have this brew given to Cerdiwin's son. He would be free. Maybe he would be rewarded with a castle of his own. Maybe he would be rewarded with gold and silver. But as the days drew on, he wanted just one thing. He wanted just one drop of the brew. Now, he knew it wasn't for him. It was for Cerdiwin's beloved child. And she was this incredible white sorceress he never wanted to tangle with. But what would it be like? What would it be like to taste this potion, to have one drop change his destiny? He kept putting the thought out of his mind. It seemed too wild and way too dangerous. And then finally, the day came. A whole entire year had passed, and it was the last day. Just the thought of putting down the wooden paddle and relaxing his shoulders and letting go of the grip caused him to slip. The paddle shot out from his hand and clanked against the edge of the cauldron. And when it did, the whole thing tipped ever so slightly. From this boiling cauldron flew 3 drops of the potion that landed on his thumb and burned so intensely that he, without thinking, put it to his mouth to cool the burning sensation. And as soon as those 3 drops of the potion hit his mouth, it's as if the entire universe opened up. He began to see and sense the world around him in a way he never had. Insights, even language began to move off of his tongue. And he knew he was doomed. He could sense Cerdiwin at the far end of the forest, slowly turning in his direction, both of them knowing what had happened. He had to flee. He had to run. His life was now in danger. Just the thought of running caused his entire body to shape shift. He thought of the fastest thing. He thought of how it would feel to be a rabbit running down a path with long back legs hopping at high speed. And before he could take another breath, he was that rabbit fleeing down the path. Unfortunately, Cerdiwin also was a shapeshifter. And right on his tail, she had turned into a hound that was sniffing hungrily after him right on his tail. The two of them in these shapes chased down the trail. Again, he thought, I have to get away. She's going to eat me, this hound, me rabbit. As he ran next to a river, he thought, if only I could swim as fast as a fish. I could outrun, I could outswim this dog. And just with that thought, under the enchantment of this potion, he slipped into the river as a fish. Fins and gills and all. Unfortunately, on his tail, Cerdiwin had turned herself into a river otter. With sharp teeth and a strong mandible, she was on his tail, and they were chasing each other up the stream. He was barely fast enough, and he began to think, if only I could fly. And with that, he shape-shifted his body from fins to wings and became a sparrow, cracked through the water into the sky. He had the agility that he had never experienced before, the freedom. And the almighty Cerdiwin that changed herself into a sparrowhawk. She was being driven by a mother's rage that someone had taken or stolen this potion, this one that would help and heal her son, that would give him a good and honorable life. And she was enraged. It fueled her to fly faster. And as she narrowed in on him, they both came to a large barn. The slats in the wood thinned. The young man, as a sparrowhawk, slid sideways through the slats and entered into a barn that had a floor covered with wheat seeds all over the floor. And without even a blink, he turned into one of those wheat seeds that were covering the floor, sure that he would not be found. But a woman's intuition is not to be messed with. Cerdiwin turned herself into a chicken. She landed on that barn floor with an appetite to find, to stop this young whippersnapper from stealing off with her magic enchantment. And with the hungry belly of a chicken, she ate each and every grain of wheat until she swallowed him whole. As the seed entered her body, she knew that her potion was stronger than she had ever imagined. It was an immortal potion. And by swallowing this young man in the form of a wheat seed, she had not killed him. She had merely planted him in her belly. She vowed, when this child was born from her, she would destroy it. But if you have ever loved something that's grown in your body, an idea, child, garden, you know that the love you put into it, you cannot destroy. And by the moon, after her belly had grown big and she finally gave birth to this child, she could not destroy it. With her own hands, she wove a basket and she put the child in it, knowing that it would survive anything even in this form, and she sent it down the river. They say that this child was found by a prince who never wanted to get married or have children. And when he found this child, he thought it was the perfect solution. He brought it back to the kingdom. And as soon as the child entered the kingdom, even as a babe, it began to speak with that silver tongue, creating worlds and enchantments, spells and sorcery. And that child grew up to be a famous storyteller that people still speak about to this day. So go ahead and close your eyes. They're not closed already. And take yourself back into the story. Reimagine the characters. Maybe even the landscape. And find a place in the story that has captured you. Maybe it's something you really loved or one of the characters you really loved. Or maybe it's something that really irritated you, or you're like, that's not right. What's that about? Take a couple deep breaths. And if you have a piece of paper, journal of some kind, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and just write out a couple sentences that say something like, the part of the story that really captured me is, and just describe it. The part of the story that I'm just not right with. The part of the story that I want an answer to. And just do a couple moments of free writing. If any insight comes to you about something in the story that's mirroring something in your life, go ahead and add to your writing. Maybe there's a part of your life where you're being required to change shape. Maybe there's a laborious task that you've been involved in for a year and a day. Maybe you're searching for a potion or a recipe, a way through to solve something in your life or some relationship. You can keep on writing. You can put your pen down, because before we close, I'd like to take a couple people who haven't shared yet and just hear from you. What captured you in the story? What's got your imagination? And if there's some mirror to the rest of your life that you want to share, you have a few minutes to share. Yeah, Kate, Cat Hunt, love to hear from you. You almost got it. There you go.
Okay. I got right caught up in the chase and the shape shifting, and I was getting really frustrated with every time the witch got a better animal. And I was getting frustrated. I just like wanted him to just stop and turn around and face her.
Yes.
Enough of this already.
I love that. I love that. I love that.
I had enough of this nonsense. Let's get this done. Arr!
I'm curious, is there a place in your life where you are needing to turn around and like bare your teeth and be like, enough of this?
Oh yeah. And I do. And I'm not accustomed to running from things.
Nice. Nice. You're a kind of person that faces things and you want the characters in the stories to do the same. I love it. Beautiful. Beautiful. May that happen with grace. Yeah, thank you so much. Who else would like to share? Yeah, Ike, love to hear from you.
Yeah, something that didn't fit for me is her initial first son. I thought the story was going to be about him and his healing, and the side character came in and took me in a whole different direction, sort of thing. And what it brought up for me is like no good deed goes unpunished, sort of thing, because he was trying to help out, and maybe things got a little bit old, and he thought maybe of a better life, and he got some on him. And he became like the, he was just trying to help out, sort of thing. And now he's on the chase, sort of thing. But I wanted to know what happened to the first son. That's was kind of left me wanting, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what came up for me. I'm complete.
I love it. Thank you. Oh my God, that's wonderful. One of the reasons I love to study stories is because, especially with stories from different cultures, is there's usually a pantheon of stories. So if you look up this story, like if you're curious, like what happened to the son, like what happened to the other characters, oftentimes there's offshoots and there are gaps also. So keep looking. I love that. So good. Thank you for speaking, Ike. We got one more share, Lisa. Yeah. You'd have to unmute yourself.
I have to unmute.
There
Okay.
you go.
All right. So I was captured by the image of her as a chicken, and I imagined her having magnificent feathers, squawking majestically, claiming her space, encircling the kernels in a spiral labyrinth, ignoring the pecking order with the fervor of a mother on the hunt for a cure.
Ooh, nice.
And I can really relate to this. Because my daughter, who's 25, was diagnosed recently with temporal lobe epilepsy. And that's me. I am that chicken squawking and, researching and circling until we get some answers.
Oh, wow. That's really profound. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you can feel that. Yeah, I love the poetry that you're weaving like right into the spiral of you saw an image within the story that wasn't spoken. Gorgeous. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope you find that solution you're looking for, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm confident that we will.
Yes. Yes. So for each and every one of you, there is a superpower that you have. Right? There is something that makes you unique that is mirrored in the story. And as you continue in this summit and potentially into the classes that the Sacred Storytelling School is offering, I just wish upon each and every one of you to find those places inside of yourself that become enlivened, right? Where you can find courage, tenacity, compassion, even access to your own grief, so that you can live your lives in a more authentic and genuine way. Storytelling is that gateway, and it always has been. And because you're here today with us, you are making valuable meaning from your life as if it was enchanted. I have so much more to share, and we're at time. I'm so grateful for all your kind attention. Those of you who've spoken up, even those of you who wanted to speak up and didn't, I appreciate you as well. I'm going to pass the mic over to Leah so she can tell you about what's more and how to continue on this journey with the School of Sacred Storytelling that I'm so honored to be a part of.
Thank you, Sirena. Thank you for that story. Thank you for everyone for your just incredible presence. You know, I was really touched. I was touched by something that someone said close to my heart over here. Heather, you know, I want to honor the wild teenagers I taught in troublesome cities back in the late 60s. You know, just like all the things that get evoked through the stories. And I think one of the reasons why I feel so committed to fostering a space where we can be with stories in this older way, where we're not, switching to the left or to the right or up and down the scroll, but where we actually get to be together, to wander through the caverns of our consciousness together. And we're together, we get to learn and remember and grow. It's where we get to remember who we are and bring out the best parts of our humanity. And I feel like that part of our lives are really being tested, along with my throat right now. Pardon me. But just it's I was just talking to someone yesterday, and in the Hopi prophecy, they say that this is the time of the zigzag. And the zigzag was a separation, and that there are those who will move away from their relationship to the earth and those who will come closer. And I really believe that this time more than ever, this sacred tool of storytelling is one of the most ancient tools that we have to bring us into the greatest exalted expression of what it is to be human. That story is the access tool to the mysteries of really accessing our greatest powers. That's a whole other thing that we could go on for about hours and hours about, but that was evoked today for me in what you were bringing, Sirena, and in this deep conversation, and all that began to trickle in as we just touched the iceberg of what a story can do in terms of helping us synthesize and make meaning, and also just feed and nourish and nurture our lives. So this good woman, Sirena, is going to be teaching a course. I'm so excited. She's teaching all these courses. I have like title envy. Listen to this course that she's teaching: Feminine Rituals, the Hidden Within Fairy Tales, Myths, and Legends. I mean, come on. That sounds like so much fun. And like, really, where are the secret codes of life living in these ancient old stories? It makes me think that the Australians say that the stories from our past must be told to our present in order for our future to exist. And very few people are carrying these old stories. And it's not something that we've done a lot of at this school. This is the first year where we have storytellers who are committed to carrying the old stories. And so I'm just really honored to have Sirena among us and to be doing that. Her class is coming up. We just put the link in the chat box. But her class is coming up October 5th, it starts, and it's on Thursdays from 5 to 7 p.m., which means that all of those Australians who often will wake up at 4 a.m. to come to our classes get to be here at a reasonable time. And for those of us who have full work days, can also come and settle into the end of the day with this sense of coming home to ourselves. So your link is there. This recording will be available through Sunday. And everyone who registers by Sunday also gets our master teacher library of over 108 hours of 2-hour classes from extraordinary teachers. And so that is there for you. Sirena, thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, sweet treat. And for those of you who want to continue with us today, oh my gosh, at 1 o'clock, The Power of Words with Naima Lightseed is coming up. And Kelsey, I don't know if you're there. Is there any way that you can post that link in there?
I sure can.
And then at 3 p.m., we have a really, we've been doing these panel discussions. And I'll just tell you right now, I had no idea how these panel discussions would go. You know, will it be fun? Will it be interesting? They've been incredible. And they've been really opening up entire other worlds of conversations of how story lives in the world. We had one on health and stories and stories in healthcare. We had one on story in the environment and climate. We had stories for social change. We're talking about with filmmakers who are writing on Netflix right now. And today we get to really enter into the realm of mythopoetics. This title, I gotta tell you, I have no idea what it means. And I can't wait to see these people unfold this conversation, but I'll tell you about it because it's that cool. It's called Reimagining the Imaginal Axis. That's not the title, I love it. Reviving the imaginal access, the mythopoetics for modern crisis. So again, how do we bring these things into our modern day lives? And dear friend, fellow storyteller and co-creator of the School for Mythopoetics, Ian McKenzie, will be moderating that with Sophie Strand, Kai Cheng Tom, and Alex Beiner. So that will also be a lively conversation at 3 p.m. And okay, and then there's more, but I'm going to stop now. What time zone in 1 p.m.? Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for asking that, Susie. And then at 5 p.m., Jacqueline Bichelle, who was our very, very first guest teacher, will be teaching a class, and it's Tending to Nature Awareness. It's going to be a beautiful class. And she also teaches through the old folk tales. Okay, without further ado, what I'd like to recommend is that take a moment just to place something in the chat. Something that you received, something that you're taking home, how you're feeling in your body right now, what's coming alive in your consciousness. Just place a little something like that. And what does this do? It feeds our dear teacher who's just fed us so well. You know, and it's one of the ways that we can enter into this giving and receiving cycle. We don't clap, you know, because we're on Zoom, but this is one of the ways that we can say thank you. We can give energy back. So I'm seeing, 3 drops. My sacred cauldron has come alive. Depth. I love these things. These are some of the things that we're receiving. So yeah, if you want to keep putting that into our chat box, it's just lovely. And then I learned so much in a lovely short time, right? I'm giving a standing ovation for real. Thank you, Daniel. And I would recommend also, if you feel the power of potions, as you're ready, I invite you to take yourself off mute and to give that standing applause. And if you feel inclined to really let's send Sirena off with a beautiful mahalo.
Exquisite, Slanja.
Goodbye, storytellers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from the middle of Britain.
What beautiful music that was.
Yeah, it's pretty music. Thank you, whoever put it on.
Oh, I'm still sharing my sound. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But it's actually this beautiful video, Hawaiian music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So like one of the main, yeah, it's bringing me home. All
Yeah.
right. Have a lovely day. Take good care.
Thank you so much.
Mm.